Earlier in the week, Nigeria's National Statistical Office released the Gross Domestic Product (GDP) report for the second quarter of the year 2025. Part of that report showed a year-on-year economic growth rate at 4.23%. But what do these figures mean for businesses, and how do these statistics make life better for the common man? Babajide Ogunsanya, who is the founder of Leadership by Data and Channels Television's chief data analyst, is right here to share more facts and vital insights about Nigeria's latest economic growth figures and its potential impact on the Nigerian economy. Babajide, great to have you again on the News at 10.
Good evening, how are you today?
All right, so let's take a look at it. The statistical office says the economy grew by 365 trillion naira as at the end of 2024. Now, are we on track, to see a threshold? I mean, the 400 trillion naira threshold this year in 2025.
So, looking at the facts, the number you said, 365 trillion, was the size of the economy based on the National Statistical Office as at the end of 2024, 365 trillion naira. Are we yet at 400 trillion naira with this 4% growth? The answer is no. For us to get to 400 trillion naira GDP from 365 trillion naira, that's approximately a 10% growth rate. So we are currently at 4%. If we continue at this speed, we'll probably get to 400 trillion naira, probably even cross that mark by 2027. That's the first point. But there are two other critical points I feel we should talk about tonight. The second point is that this week as well, pretty much within the last 7 days, we've seen the Monetary Policy Committee cut the benchmark monetary policy rate from 27.5% to 27%. That is good news because the intention as well is yes, to fight inflation, but perhaps to also further support economic growth and create a bit more prosperity overall in the economy. So we've moved from 27.5% monetary policy rate to 27%. That's the first cut, Ayotunde, in 5 years. Remember, it was back in September 2020 when the rate was cut from 12.5% to 11.5%. So overall, good news if you look at it from that perspective. But there's another perspective you can look at it from that shows bad news. Yes, we are celebrating a 27% monetary policy rate today. However, Ayotunde, that critical month, May 2015, when President Buhari came in, we had a new president, we had a new party. What was the monetary policy rate as at May 2015? Looking at the records of the central bank, Ayotunde, then the monetary policy rate was 13%. And even then, we felt 13% was such a high monetary policy rate. Businesses, manufacturing companies were asking for a lower monetary policy rate. So 13% May 2015, a lot of millions of businesses, hundreds of businesses and millions of citizens were complaining. 13% May 2015. Now 27%. Should we be really celebrating? But overall, businesses perhaps will feel a bit relieved that things perhaps are going in the way they've always said it should be.
So which brings us to the next question. I mean, 4.23%, Babajide, the second quarter of this year, the economy has grown by 4.23%. Well, what really have contributed to the sectors? I mean, what sectors have contributed to this?
So two ways we can quickly look at it. The first is to take a look at the largest sectors and then to look at if these largest sectors are the ones that are the fastest growing, because you can be large and not be growing as fast. So first let's take a look at the largest sectors, and when we take a look at the largest sectors, we'll then look at the fastest growing sectors. The evidence shows that there are 7 sectors in Nigeria that account for 70% of our economic size. So these 7 sectors are the most critical in Nigeria's economy. Again, I repeat, these 7 sectors account for 70% of all of Nigeria's economy: trade, crop production, real estate, financial institutions, construction. Now, yes, we've seen the numbers grow by 4% year on year. Overall, that's all of these sectors. Overall, 4%. Good news. The bad news, however, today is look at that sector, trade. Trade is Nigeria's largest economic sector. How much did trade grow compared to last year? The National Bureau of Statistics says less than 2%. Look at crop production, livestock, our agricultural sector. How much did our agricultural sector, the sector that employs most Nigerians, how much did the agricultural sector grow relative to last year? The answer again is within that report, less than 3%. So the question now is, if Nigeria's largest economic sectors are not growing that fast, which sectors are really contributing to this 4% growth rate? And if you take a look at our fastest growing economic sectors, which is different from the largest economic sectors, it allows us to clearly see which sectors are really contributing to our growth. And if you take a look at those sectors in the chart of the week, it is very clear that, for instance, coal mining, in our chart of the week, coal mining grew 58% year on year. Yes, coal mining is not among the largest sectors, but we see the growth in coal mining. We see a lot of growth in quarrying and other minerals. We see a lot of growth in road transport. We see a lot of growth in oil refining, 16%. However, one sector that has really and has the most contributed to the 4% growth rate that was reported is the financial institution sector. I would tell you the financial institution sector year on year grew by 16%. Don't forget, the financial institution sector was among those top 7 largest sectors. So it really added a lot of support to Nigeria's overall picture. Good news, however, the bad news is that sector that employs most Nigerians, the agricultural sector, is still not growing to its potential. You heard me right. The agricultural sector year on year growing less than 3% per annum. So we need to really look at that.
So the GDP now, beyond the GDP indicator, what other economic indicators really are the most critical for Nigeria?
You know, I would say that's one area that I'm really passionate about, because I feel that the country and the government has over-relied on this one indicator, the gross domestic product. Even the founder of the GDP, who is said to be the founder, Simon Kuznets, never really said this is how the GDP should be used. Now the GDP is now among the 3 most read books: the Quran, the Bible, and now the GDP report. However, there are indicators that, for me, the government now needs to, and the country needs to pay more attention to. We have the real median income, which really measures the purchasing power of the people and allows us to clearly see what is the median income doing. Remember one of the words of the famous professor who won the Nobel Prize, who was the recipient of the Nobel Memorial Prize in Economic Science, Professor Joseph Stiglitz said, what we measure affects what we do. If we measure the wrong thing, we will do the wrong thing. So we need to measure the right thing. Part of the right things we need to measure today is the job approval rating of our leaders. What is the job approval rating of President Tinubu? What is the job approval rating of the governors, of the National Assembly members? Those are things that really matter to the people. Service satisfaction, not just in public service, but even in the private sector. How satisfied are consumers? But above all, if there's one indicator that we all need to, and which really measures what people are concerned about, is the gross national happiness indicator. At the end of the day, how happy is the common man? And that is one question that the president needs to have the answers put on his desk, because it then clearly lets him to know what the situation of the country is.
I will definitely keep tabs and see how that pans out in the coming days, weeks, and of course months. But we thank you for your insights again on the
I'm trying to measure how happy you are that I'm going now.
Oh, well, we're always happy. We're always happy. We have to do the job. Thank you so much once again.
We'll do this next week, I think.